First off, your documentary is really good.
Thank you.
It is. I mean, there are some films I'm like, I don't want to talk about. But I was so impressed with the sound that you guys did. Who was your sound Foley person? Because drums can just take over an entire room, and you really did a great job, because I was listening to it on a big sound system. The different sounds were coming through. It wasn't just one big boom, 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 boom.
Well, thank you. That was a combination of things. Frankly, we were a pretty small crew when we were out in the field. So, we were recording on wireless microphones and camera mics. But when it came to the performances, we did have sound people in each of the locations. Probably most frequent was Carly Zuckweiler, who ended up being our re-recording mixer. But then also we ended up doing a mix with Skywalker Sound to do our 5.1, which was not in our original plan for the film. We didn't think to ask for it, but we knew that the sound was so critical. And so we heard it in a theater and we're like, I want this to feel like an actual Taiko performance that just shakes your whole body. And so we were put in contact with them strictly to, get feedback from them. And then they're like, well, the best thing you could do is come out here and mix with us. And I was like, is that a thing? Can we do that thing? And they said yes, which shocked me. And they were so kind, and they did pro bono mix of our independent documentary film. We got to work with Laura Hirschberg, who is one of the top Oscar-winning female mixers, and it kept with our whole mission of having the people in front of the camera be reflected behind the camera. So women, non-binary, queer, Asian, across the board for our crew. So that was how the sound thing worked. So I'm glad it worked well for you.
It did.
Since I'm the director of photography and was doing most of the filming, I find that doing audio and filming at the same time is very tricky, and we did not have a dedicated audio person on the field with us. And so I'm really happy to hear that you love the sound.
Well, since you were in charge of the cinematography, what did you shoot on? Because it's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. I used the Canon C300 Mark II, and I had two fabulous second camera people with me. In Japan, I worked with Shiho Fukada, and then Carolyn Mariko Stuckey came in from New York City to work with me for the Minnesota and America side of the story.
Is it a multi-camera shoot, or did you?
Yeah, two cameras at both in Japan and in the U.S.
Okay. And I have to ask, because one of my notes is who did you know to get such good access to all this? How did you first get drawn to this story?
Well, Dawn and Jen were friends for many, many years, and so I'm going to let Dawn tell that story.
Yeah, so Jen and I got together for lunch in 2018, and she had just dreamed up this big idea of doing this magical concert. And at that point, we were also sharing stories as friends do of what it's like to be a woman in a male-dominated field. For her, it's Taiko. For me, it's film. So we had that kind of commonality as both women and mothers. And so, she has this big dream, and then is like, could you maybe film the concert? Because, we'll need it for grant writing later and things like that. Kind of, you want to document your work as a performer. And I was like, Jen, this is a film. And she, she's a visionary. And so she immediately agreed that this was a film. And so we jumped right into it. And Jen is a producer on the film, as well as being a principal participant. So, yeah, she was critical to making this go. But, yeah, she totally believed in our vision. And I talked to Keri soon after that of doing this film cinema verite, so that their stories could rise up and they could just be who they were, and we were just documenting the whole event, and then later could make sense of it in the edit. So there's, we don't do interviews. It's all fly on the wall.
I think that the intimacy that you find in Finding Her Beat is one of the strengths of the film, and I think that that's partly achieved by the fact that we really did have that all-woman action behind the camera. And so being embedded with all these women, which it meant that I was with them 24/7. And it just is something that I'm very interested in, is very important to me as a filmmaker, to have intimacy. And I'm just thrilled that they allowed us the kind of access. I think that documentary filmmaking is all about access.
Yes, it is. And that was one of my questions too, is did you go out to just capture, the making of this great event, and then this wonderful story happens in the editing suite of all these relationships? Because that's what hooked me, was all the relationships with the women.
Right.
Well, because we had a large cast of women who came from all around the world and who are all directors and powerful women in their own right, I think that we were a little bit wondering at first, well, we can't tell the story of 18 people in 90 minutes. It's just not going to happen. And so we always knew that Jennifer Weir and her wife, Megan Chao-Smith, would be an important people in the film. And they were echoing and manifesting Tiffany Tamaribuchi's dream. And so we knew Tiffany would also be an important part of the film. And when I went to Japan to film, I really had read about Chieko and Kaoly, the two principal participants from Japan. There were many women who came from Japan. But we chose them to single out because Chieko comes from the Kodo school on Sado Island, and she represents the very traditional, ancient approach to Taiko and has been struggling to find her way to becoming a taiko drummer, as she really started out as a dancer. And then Kaoly Asano is somebody who has been playing taiko for 20 years but has never really found her way, is being accepted into the taiko, traditional taiko world because of her unique flamboyant style. And so we didn't realize when we set off that these women would so perfectly embody some of the different trends happening in taiko, and that also that these women, we didn't really realize the hierarchy of these women and how highly regarded they are in Japan, and how honored all these other women from Japan would be to play with them. And so it became a journey for all of us. And so I think that's part of the strength of the film, is that there's lots of transformations that happen in the film, and overcoming of struggles.
Yeah, the younger performers were like, oh my God, I'm getting to not just perform but practice with these two icons that in our country, And when they hit the stage, people in the audience was like, oh my God, that they're actually getting to see them live, because it was a big deal for a lot of the American audiences and the Canadian audiences to see these people live.
It's unique to have a bilingual film and an international film that speaks to people around the world, I think. And taiko is an art form that has traveled all around the world. It originated in Japan, but now there are taiko enthusiasts and taiko practitioners all around the world. And we have found that people are so grateful that we have brought this story forward. And so it's been thrilling to see the response from the taiko community, but also from the Asian community and women and all drummers, queer audiences. We're really so honored that the film touches so many people, and that we're really not just a taiko film. We're a film about women's empowerment and about taking your dream and manifesting it. And taiko is the stage that story is set on, but it's not necessarily about Taiko. It is, but it's not.
Taiko, people will say it's about Taiko.
It's about Taiko.
And to your point, the audiences that came to the final performance, it says something about those audiences and how passionate they are, that what we don't show in the film, but I will say now, is that they were coming from all across North America, and they too were coming to Minnesota in the dead of winter, and nobody wants to do that except Minnesotans. Yeah. And so the fact that they were that passionate to come across the country, from California and the East Coast and Hawaii, just to see all of these women on one stage for the first time ever, says a lot about this community.
And then it was, as you put in the documentary, right when COVID was cresting and just starting, and people are freaking out and not going anywhere.
Yes. Yeah. The timing of the filming, clearly we did not plan that.
But it did give some dramatic height to it.
It did give some dramatic height to the story. And, I think when we first wrapped production, we were having these conversations about, do we include COVID? And it just became clear that we couldn't not. It was in the air, maybe not physically, but it was definitely in the emotional space, and also in retrospect. So, in the film, you see kind of like the news coming in as what was happening in the mainstream news, while we were filming. But, they were so busy filming that they didn't necessarily see those news stories, but to watch it in retrospect and be like, oh my God, all of this is happening at the same time that these women were, preparing to take the stage, and how close they came to not being able to take the stage at all. I cried many times while editing the film, just because it hit those points of like, wow, we were close. That was a thing.
Yes.
In filmmaking, especially in documentary, we like to say, no struggle, no story. And we really had enough of a struggle without COVID making an appearance. We really were happy with our level of struggle that we were working on overcoming, because just Jennifer pulling off this massive concert and bringing all these women together was a big struggle. And then I think one of the things that comes through in the film is that all these women, even though they're at the top of their game, they were still questioning, am I good enough to be here? Am I, why was I chosen? And so that tradition of women being excluded, we could see how it had really been internalized, and how in the process of making Her Beat, it was changed and transformed into personal power and professional excellence.
Yeah, I liked, you didn't focus on it, but you did touch on the jockeying that they were doing. It's like, ooh, I need a bigger piece. Well, I should come first. And, all the jockeying that happens. I don't care who you are, man, woman, whatever. When you get talent together, they want to be the first one out, or they want the spotlight. So I liked the way you touched on it and showed how they worked through it. That was very, very nice. I really enjoyed that.
And to Dawn's point, we really did not realize what was going on with COVID at the time. And even though the performers, many of them had come from Asia and they might have known about COVID, they were still also discovering and trying to figure out, what is this? What's going on? And so none of us really knew at all. And then in the end, we wrapped production, a 2-year production, on March 2nd of 2020.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Did you lose any of your performers to COVID when they went back home?
Not. We had some. We had the bout of what we believed to be the flu in the production of the. In preparing for the production, and but no, as far as I know, nobody really got COVID.
But they did have a challenge getting back home. There were a number of women who had planned that they would come to Minnesota and then go other places and do other residencies around North America after the concert, and it became very clear that they just need to get home. And so there were a handful that it was a trick to get them home fast. Otherwise, they were not going home. And luckily, everybody got home. But that was something that once the cameras were off, and we were off doing our own thing, trying to figure out what our lives were about, these women were trying to get home.
The one thing I would say about the COVID experience is that it worked out to be a plus on the editing side, because I know that Dawn and I are both editors on the film, and I did the first pass of the editing to take the film down to a reasonable amount of hours. And that kind of focus that COVID enabled was tremendous, and I had never been able to have a situation where I had 11-hour work days, day after day after day, and the only interruption was my walk, my daily walk. I mean, it was tremendous. It was a gift as an editor to be able to have that kind of focus and to have your real world just totally evaporate, and then all I was living was her beat.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that there's going to be a concert-only film that you guys can put a bug in the air. We need to see that, because I would love to see the whole concert from beginning to end.
That is in the works. A concert video. We're kind of midway through that. I think that we'll be doing a theatrical tour of the film before we release any concert video. But it will be available, so people can follow us online, and when it is available, we'll let you know. But first, we got to get through our festivals and theatrical release before we go there for the concert video.
And you guys have been on the festival circuit for about a year now, right? No?
October.
Yeah, so 9 months? I don't know. I'm not doing the math. But
all right. I heard you brought some drummers to some of them.
Most of our screenings, there have been drummers, whether we brought them or, in most major metropolitan areas, there are Taiko groups. And that has been so amazing to be at these festivals, and this community, the Taiko community, gets to showcase what it's about. And after screenings, I can't tell you how many times people are like, "How do I want to play Taiko? How do I do that?" And we're, it's so nice to be able to say, "See those guys? They're in your community. Go play Taiko." So it's been a really beautiful thing watching this community flourish around the film, and actually watching the women in the film come together, because in some of these locations we'll have 5 or 6 of the her beat players, particularly in California. There's a number of them in California, play together for the first time since her beat. And, so that's a very emotional and meaningful thing for them to be together again for the first time. I will also say that there is a dream that we're putting out to the world, that there will be a national tour of her beat, national or international. We're looking at Japan as well. Because all these women want to play, and they want to do this together. And I think the original vision of the concert was that it would start a tour, and then COVID happened. Yeah. So it's a delayed tour, but I don't know. I think we just need somebody who can produce a massive international tour.
The her beat concert, we see Jennifer Weir as one of the principal participants, not only of our film, but as of a movement towards including women on the center stage in Taiko, and also growing Taiko as an art form. And she and Megan and Tiffany, well, all of the women, but Jennifer especially, is just a powerhouse of enthusiasm, and you can see that in the film.
Oh yeah, even when she was losing her voice, she's like, let's keep going.
Yeah. No, Jen brings an energy to, I love doing screenings with Jen. I like doing screenings with Keri too. too. But bringing Jen in, I mean, like she creates standing ovation after standing ovation because she's in it. She feels it. This is her life, and she's so passionate about the art form, not only for it being an art form, but like how it represents her identity as an Asian American woman and how it can be used to empower people regardless of ethnicity or gender. So it's just so fun to watch her.
So have you guys gotten a distribution deal yet?
We have not. We have an educational deal with Good Docs, but we do not have a distributor yet. So if there are any distributors out there who would like to take on a film that, if there are any distributors out there, I mean, we've screened at more than 40 festivals in the last 9 months, and have sold out audiences, opening nights. So we feel really confident that we can fill theaters, and because again, this film is more than our niche Taiko audience. This is anybody who's had a dream and was told no and said, you know what, I'm going to make my dream happen regardless of you. They're throwing their own party. And I feel like that has resonated with audiences no matter who they are. And that's what's so beautiful about this film.